Greetings, YouTubers. I apologize if I'm a little hoarse. It's that time of year, but I have some good news. Gary Johnson has decided that he is going to run for president again in 2016, and I think it's interesting that he specifically mentioned Rand Paul, and I think he did that because Rand Paul is probably the most libertarian of all the GOP candidates that are well known at this point and will possibly run. So he specifically mentioned Rand Paul. And I'll bring something else into this in a second as far as the presidential debates go. But if you're socially a classical liberal, because today's liberals, like when most people say liberal today, it doesn't mean what it really is. Those people are progressives. If you're socially liberal, for example, forgetting about what my views are, but if you're pro-abortion and pro-homosexual marriage, yet you don't get in line with bailing out big banks, FDIC, depositor insurance, trade protectionism, taxing everyone into oblivion, bankrupt entitlement programs. If you're socially liberal but you don't agree with all of those other things, then you're probably a good candidate to vote for the libertarian candidate. And I voted for Gary Johnson in 2012. I may very well vote for him again. We'll see. Certainly going to be very high on my list. But he's the whole left-right paradigm is dead. There are a lot of people who are, and there are some people too that are socially conservative, but a little more on the progressive side when it comes to entitlement programs and taxation. But the last part of this, real quick, and I would hope you go, I have all the links below, and I really hope you go sign this petition, because Gary Johnson's Our America initiative is suing the Presidential Debate Commission to where any candidate that gets on enough state ballots to get the 270 electoral votes required to be president should be at the presidential debates. And this Presidential Debate Commission is, it's like a thing I've heard from a lot of people. There's not two parties. There's one party in Washington ganging up on we the people. It's the party of government in Washington. And as you can see, as I know very well, and hopefully you do too, the Romney and Obama, for example, they had a lot in common. Ron Paul, however, differed from them, just picking him out of the group, differed from those two clowns quite a bit. So if we had the libertarian candidate on stage with, say, Hillary Clinton and Rand Paul, just for example, or Joe Biden and Rand Paul, or Joe Biden and Jeb Bush, if we had Gary Johnson on the stage, or the libertarian nominee, whoever that might be, hopefully it's Gary, I'm not going to say that the libertarian candidate would be elected president, but if it's Gary, he knows his stuff. He's not a sham candidate. He got on every ballot except for one last time around. Oklahoma, if I remember right, didn't allow third-party candidates. Boo! So I would wager that he would garner over 10% of the national vote, and it would build from there because you would have a different voice. Because the two parties have become homogenized in a lot of ways, unfortunately, and they're both going to continue these entitlement programs on autopilot. They're both going to continue to tax you into oblivion, unless you're a receiver, unless you're on Medicare like Old Fart and the phony Dr. McStupid, and you're a ward of the state on those entitlement programs. If you're a producer, you're going to get shafted. So both parties love war. Both parties love deficit spending. Both parties like bailing out big banks. Both parties like protectionism. Both parties are crony capitalists. So if we had Gary Johnson on the stage with those two, I think we would see some change. But the Presidential Commission on Debates does not want this to occur. So I hope you go sign that petition to get the libertarian candidate on stage with the two-party duopoly in 2016, and we'll see what happens. So good luck. We'll need it. I also needed to add this as part of my rationale that Gary Johnson would get some traction, because a lot of voters are becoming disenfranchised with the two parties. More and more people are, and a higher percentage of, and it's true in a lot of states like Alaska, New Jersey, Florida's another one, Connecticut, where more and more voters are identifying as independent. And you can tell from the voter turnout in 25 statewide primaries recently, this summer, said of nearly 123 million voters who were eligible to cast ballots in 25 statewide primaries for governor and U.S. Senate, only 18 million did so. That's a 14.8% turnout. So people are not ginned up. They're not excited. And there's a lot of people, all they do is vote in the general election, and they just let other people decide who the nominees are. And if you get two people that suck, like we did in the last presidential election, and the last two actually, really bad, you know, the more I learn, the more these candidates from the two parties stink, and I continue to learn, they're not fired up about it. So there's a lot of people who I think, and I'm not necessarily speaking to people who don't vote, because if you got to drag them to vote, like a lot of the Democrats were really getting excited to get these low information idiots to the polls. But there's a lot of people who only vote in the general election, and they hold their nose. And I think they could be persuaded to vote for Gary Johnson, because people aren't excited. They aren't excited about the Democrats or Republicans. So I can add that to my rationale as, why we should have Gary Johnson or the Libertarian nominee on stage with the Republicrats in a couple years. Have a nice day.